Hey, welcome back, everybody. HSC Podcast number 17. 17. So thanks for joining us. If it's your first time listening or watching, now you know we are on YouTube and we're on Apple Podcasts and we're on Spotify. And we get some listeners on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So it's pretty exciting. Not obviously as many as we got on YouTube, but if you can't catch us on YouTube, please jump on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's awesome. So
They don't like looking at us.
No, I mean, it's better. I mean, you guys listen, you get to hear us instead of see us. So what would you want more than that? But that's awesome. So thank you for watching and listening, everybody. If you aren't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Jump on that playlist. You can catch all of our previous podcasts, and also you can listen to them all as well. So let's jump into it here. We got Big Box Steve. And we got, of course, the Big Smooth. And now back on the mic, Fresh Wes. Good to have you back, Wes. This is in Wes's wheelhouse. Missed him for the 80s movies, but man, got you back for the 90s movies. So first we're gonna jump into our first topic and stay up for the whole podcast, because at the end we're gonna talk about the NFL draft, which is the first round. But the first thing I want to jump into today is the 90s movies. So what we're doing is we're going to look at what's the best movie / maybe our favorite. We might have some bias for most of the genres. We're not going to hit every single genre. And according to IMDb, which they're pretty loose with their genres. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah.
It's like 3 genres for one movie. One movie is just like all over the place. So that actually added an additional challenge in here. So before we jump into this, Wes, you missed the 80s movies. Derek, we were just talking about this. I think it was harder to choose one 90s movie in each genre than it was to do a top 5 80s. What did you think about that, Derek?
Well, yeah, I could see that. Although after we did the 80s, then we started thinking about tons of other movies we could have used too.
Right.
I think some of the topics, some of the categories are pretty, I think, cut and dry. And then others, like, I feel like comedy and drama, there's so much.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of mix in most of them. But yeah, you're right. I think there's a couple where I feel was pretty strongly about the ones I went with. I didn't have much, but there was also so many. It was kind of surprising. I mean, Wes, when you were looking at the 90s movies, did you remember or realize that there are that many good 90s movies?
Well, I mean, I've been saying for about 10 years, they just don't make movies they don't make movies like they did in the 90s. I think the 80s, of course, as a child, you just kind of want to forget some things in the 80s. So I tend to watch more 90s movies just in general. But there was a lot of great movies in the 90s. Yeah. And then you get to 2000 and around 2008, it just seems like everything went downhill. And
quite a bit.
Yeah.
Downhill.
Pretty much, but independent movies in 1990s, of course, that's kind of where it all began. They actually had real independent movies that you actually went to the film festival and independent artists.
Before we jump into the movie picks, what's the difference for you for 80s and 90s movies? Is there a big difference between how they were made, acting, the writing? Like, what's the difference?
It's kind of it's almost like comparing, in a sense, 80s movies to 70s movies. Like 90s movies, even the way they're shot, the type of movies, it's not catchy like 80s movies were. The 80s was the catchy, the kind of just the it factor when it came to so many great movies. But you wouldn't say that they're, you know, they're not as dark. The 90s was dark like the 70s.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some feel good movies in the 80s, as far as the storylines. I could see that. Derek, how do you think about the advance in technology? Do you think that helps the 90s over the 80s as they advance that 10 years or so in technology of making movies?
Well, on some, yeah, there are some revolutionary movies that were made in the 90s that still hold up today from the technology, and that were like groundbreaking when they came out, and they still get used today. I'll spoiler alert, I'll put one that's not on my list, but like think about like The Matrix,
Right.
like the slow motion and all that. It's still being used and parodied today. So
yeah, and it was new, it was new to the scene. It was very revolutionary. I think this is a good word for it. I think in general, just looking at, there was kind of the beginning of CGI there, of real advanced CGI, where they were starting to use that in a different way. They were able to, not necessarily have to, full on set shoot everything. They could actually cut out some of the set shoots, save themselves some money, but also make it, a little bit more realistic sometimes. Because you got to admit, sometimes when you see those old sets, you're like, come on, guys. This is obviously like a set you're zooming in on a table, And so I think there's a little less of that in the 90s, in my opinion. There was still some of it, of course, but I think there was a little less of that. So good stuff there. Love, again, for me, 80s is still the best decade. So even going through the list of all these 90s movies, there's some great movies there. I still can't say it's better than the 80s. So 80s or 90s, Derek?
that's really, really tough. I'd still have to go 80s, just for the sheer fact of a lot of the Spielberg movies are in the 80s, and George Lucas, and those were pretty big movies back then. The 90s, they had some, but
well, they have a lot.
Yeah, but you didn't have any Star Wars in the 90s.
That's true. I mean, and Star Wars was just revolutionary, groundbreaking. Wes, 80s or 90s?
I have to say 90s for me. There's just so many. It's probably the last decade for even the idea of an epic movie, or but there's just so many great movies, so many great comedies, pretty much every genre, and then the independent films.
There's definitely more. I think there's better independent films in the 90s than the 80s for sure. But that has to do with what was happening in that time, and as it was becoming a bigger thing with film festivals and things like that, right? So there were more as well as better.
We should have added an independent category.
I know,
Steve.
we should. As I was looking through the movies, I was like, because sometimes you run into the independent ones and you're like, man, I'd really like to put this one on there, but I only get one.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you're going to compare that to some of the iconic 90s movies. And it's like, man, it was hard to do that. So let's jump into it.
I have two independent movies that are near and dear to my heart that I'd love to put on the lists, but I'm like, I can't put them over these other ones.
Okay. There's a couple movies as I was going through this, it's like, that's a Derek movie. It's like, I can't imagine not having that, but then how is he going to pick this over these other movies?
Right.
So let's jump into action first. So Wes, why don't you lead us off? What is your one and only action movie?
It has to be Point Break.
Oh my gosh, I thought that was Derek's.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I was trying to pick another one that wasn't Point Break, but I just can't. It's
Right.
to me. I mean, it's far and away to me the best. I think it's hard, like, because I always like to distinguish between what's my favorite
And what's the
and
best?
what's the best.
That was my biggest problem.
And Point Break, should have been nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it should have won because, again, when it
There's
comes to
so many good ones.
oh yeah, when it comes to Oscar movies in the night, if you ask someone who's rating like an Oscar rater, they're going to tell you the 90s is just it's a better movie for the top 5 than the 80s movies were.
Right.
So, but I think Unforgiven won that year.
Right.
But
which is an amazing movie.
Amazing.
yeah. So, but I think it should have been nominated.
Right.
I mean,
And
it just can't.
if you don't love Patrick Swayze in that movie, I mean, I get it. Keanu Reeves and I'm not a Keanu Reeves fan. I think he's good. I like him, but nothing like what Swayze did in that movie.
Gary Busey.
I mean, the supporting and the storyline, like it's all good, but man, without Patrick Swayze in there,
Right.
like is Point Break that movie? Yeah, so love it. So yeah, Point Break. I thought it was Derek, so Wes threw me off. So Derek, what's your action?
See, I went the opposite. Instead of going with my favorite, this one I went with what I feel like would be the best, and that was Terminator 2.
I knew it.
Yeah, that's true.
So I won't even spoil it. I went Terminator 2 also. So why did you go Terminator 2, Derek?
Oh, like we were talking about with the CGI and everything, it was revolutionary with everything that was happening. The liquid metal Terminator, and the story was great. The first Terminator was really good, but when you go back and watch it, the special effects are not really great.
Right,
where
right.
T2, it still holds up today. And that's where, and I kind of have a test because my wife's not much of a like older movie watcher. So when she watches an older movie and she's like, look at these special, I'm like, oh, you got to think of when it was made. T2 still holds up.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and obviously I went T2 as well, because it's not often that the second's better than the first, right? And so that's my opinion. I know people might argue that, but I really believe T2 is better than T1. And when you talk about the not just the CGI, but the storyline itself, and Arnold coming back as a good Terminator, or not a good, but like a helpful Terminator, but also they break the story in it. They really like help you understand about Skynet and everything that's happening, so you feel like you really get the Terminator series from that movie. And then of course that the liquid metal Terminator is just awesome, right? And it just makes the movie, and it's pretty cool. So
and then the other thing I love is Linda Hamilton. First movie, she was more what you call meek, getting protected. This one, she's a total badass,
right? Like she has to be.
Yeah,
but she doesn't overdo it.
No,
like
she
now,
doesn't.
It's not, we're not going to make her into a superhero here, but it's totally believable. So I mean, yeah,
well, the whole in the insane asylum, the mental hospital scene, like it doesn't get any better than that. Like that's like one of the best scenes in any movie you'll ever see. That whole from beginning of them getting there to them leaving is just awesome, So
and it's they don't hurry it. Like that's the thing about the movies nowadays. You have to hurry everything.
You're rushing it.
So many you have to cut in and out, and everyone's gonna lose interest. But just the way that played out.
So I got to tell you though, this was actually, I know drama is hard. We'll talk about drama here in a little bit, but this one was actually one of my harder ones because I had such a hard time not putting Heat on there.
Yeah,
because Heat is just one of my all-time favorite movies. But
another movie that should have been nominated and wasn't, and that was the weakest probably year in the 90s.
Right.
96.
So So that's a good one. So Derek, we're on the same link there. I actually thought you guys might be switched on that one. So good, great. So let's go to comedy. So comedy, I think I have the biggest list of comedy that I was trying to choose from. I think drama was second, but comedy I think is first. And because there's a lot of good 90s comedies, I think. And what I really like about 90s comedies was the variety of comedy. You had a lot of different type of comedy in the 90s, which I think was great. And some of it people didn't really enjoy, but to be honest with you, like I enjoy all of them. I like the dry, I like the direct, slapstick. I like it all, So for me, 90s comedy is awesome. And I went a little different way here in the end. So I'm going to leave this one off and I'm going to go with Swingers. And the reason I'm going with Swingers is because you got to love a young Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau. I mean, first of all, it's like, to me, they're icons in movies. Like these guys, it doesn't get any better. And watching the evolution of these guys over the years makes them even better when you go back and watch Swingers. I'm sure you guys have, you watch Mandalorian and the new stuff, and you're like, what? Jon Favreau? And so to me, that makes it even more iconic. But when you talk about Swingers, you just talk about like just a great story. Like they do such a good job in the acting. You can tell it's not super high budget. And they really just make the movie by their great acting. And that's what makes it such a great movie. And it's funny, right? And so it's funny. There is a little bit of drama to it, but it's great, So Swingers ended up with my comedy vote. So Derek, what do you got?
Well, and then with Swingers, and this comes with my one, I always think of comedies as being very quotable.
Right.
And how often have we quoted Swingers? Like
right.
all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, because it's Swingers.
and for me, the comedy I went probably a few years with so many quotes from this one. And I'm going for a 1998 comedy, There's Something About Mary.
Oh, man. And what's crazy about that movie? I'll let you talk about in a second, but it's such a good movie, but this is where I run into the people that don't get it, like you run into these people like, oh, that's not funny, and you're like, what do you mean? That's the problem I have with some of these 90s comedies. But yeah, I mean, love Something About Mary, one of my favorites. So why'd you pick it?
Well, I just think of stuff like, what is Brett Favre doing here? Or I mean, just the whole stuff with Matt Dillon, the whole, like everything he's doing. Like nowadays they call this a problematic movie, but as in the 90s, it was hilarious, him stalking, and then you have the other boyfriend who's there, and you find out at the end, and it's
dude, Tucker's the best though. Come on, this dude, like he plays like he's like crippled, and he's like a pizza dude. His name's Norm.
Yeah. And he's I'm talking even Oogie, yeah. Chris Elliott,
right? And that's like the throw it in the you didn't see that one coming, right?
Right. I mean, that's the whole, and then Frankenbeans, right? I mean,
yeah, that's good. I love Something About Mary, and I gotta admit, I'm not a huge fan of Cameron Diaz, but I think she does such a good job in that movie. It's like the perfect part for her. And so I'm definitely down with that. Love that movie. Wes, what you got?
Mine was Swingers too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, there's so many great, it's just so many great comedies. But if again, I'm thinking of the best, the best comedy that I could think of in the 90s. I mean, I like My Cousin Vinny. That's up there as, really good comedy.
What do you guys
Adam Sandler?
What do you think of something like Tommy Boy?
Yeah, I thought. I love Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
Just like I like Happy Gilmore more.
It was hard, Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore in the 90s, right? Yeah. That was a tough one for me. Tommy Boy was really hard for me because I love Chris Farley.
Yeah.
Like he's just, man, so over the top. And again, some people get, turned off by that, but it just makes me laugh even more.
Well, and that one was perfect too because David Spade was perfect with Chris Farley.
Right. You couldn't put oil and water together better. Right. I mean, it's like you couldn't have matched a better two to run those parts. So perfectly cast. So yeah, that was so I had to throw that one in there because that was a hard one for me. Office Space was a hard one for me not to put in there. But again, it's that not everybody loves those movies. If you don't love swingers, then yeah, you don't love movies. So good stuff there. Now this is a tough category. So let's go to drama. Derek, let's start off with you this time. So tell us your drama. What is it?
Well, my drama, some people consider it an action movie, but it's also considered a drama because there's such great acting and dialogue in it, and that is Heat.
Nice.
Heat is my drama.
Well, and that's the thing about IMDb. They had them, they had these, and that's what we went off of, right? So if they classified it that way, and so.
But
Yeah, go ahead.
I've always considered Heat more of a drama than an action movie because you do have the end scene, which is a total action, but the whole storyline is a cat and mouse game between Al Pacino and Robert De Niro.
Right.
And it's like them trying to one up each other.
And you got Val Kilmer drama, with
Natalie Portman,
the wife and the kid, and then Natalie Portman with Al Pacino's drama. So there's tons of action in it too, right? But the cast, though, right?
Such a great cast. Danny Trejo, got his start really on Heat because he was actually there to be a consultant because he was in prison and everything for bank robberies, and he was a consultant on that, and they put him in the movie. So many people in that movie. Michael T. Williamson, Naomi Judd, Hank Azaria,
right.
So many.
Yeah, and there's so many good dramas, and then when you throw Heat in there too, like now that's a lot of good drama.
Well, it's hard. I had another one, but I wanted to make sure Heat got in there for something.
Right. Well, and I had that same problem with Heat and the action, but so Wes, what do you got for drama?
That's a tough one. I got American History X.
Wow. Yeah.
It's tough. Like you want to go Forrest Gump, because
right.
That's one of the great movies of the 90s. But another movie that didn't get nominated in the 90s, which should have been. It was a tough year. I mean, 1998 was a lot of great movies, but it just.
I mean, how do you pick American History X over all these other dramas? Like, so what makes that the best?
It's just you're blown away by, just the transformation from, Derek, played by Edward Norton. It's a transformation from what he was, then going to jail, and just the acting. I mean, it's one of the best acting jobs that I've ever seen.
It really is. I mean, it is one of the best performances I think any actor has ever done. When you talk about him in American History X, and it's kind of they're kind of capturing reality a little bit at that time too. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of hard to watch at some points.
It's really hard.
It's a tough one, but it's a great movie. So I mean, I can't you can't say anything bad about it. I love it. It's definitely one of my top ones, and drama, God, it was so hard for me because you had so many good movies that qualified for drama, because IMDb, of course, is all over the place with drama for sure. But I could not. After I looked at all the dramas, I looked at this and I said, you know what, Shawshank Redemption, it's just the best movie ever. And I know that's a lot to say, but man, I mean, it's one of those movies I can watch a million times. It never gets old. I never get tired of it. You're always pulling for Andy, and Morgan Freeman just plays such a great character. And then he wins in the end, and that's, to me, I just love it. It's like, and because this whole time you're just so mad that this guy just wrongfully imprisoned, but you don't know it at first, but then you do know it, and then and then he gets over on him. So I went Shawshank, and I know it's obviously a highly rated movie and everybody knows it and everything like that, and so that at the end of the day I just had to say you got to go with the best movie at that point. So Shawshank on that one. But let's talk about drama for a second, because Wes, you mentioned Forrest Gump, which I think is an awesome movie, right? I love Forrest Gump. I mean, I just want to say, I'll say another one that I had that was really hard for me, and I want to kind of hear from you guys is, so I had Braveheart, which is really hard for me not to put on there. I love Braveheart. Is there any other dramas that you guys had that?
Goodfellas.
Goodfellas, yeah.
And then Unforgiven.
Yeah, Unforgiven, Goodfellas.
Fight Club.
Yeah.
And then I have a thing for it. There's Pulp Fiction, and there's LA Confidential.
I thought you were going to go Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, I thought of it.
That's one of the ones I was like, Derek is going Pulp Fiction, but you didn't.
Tarantino's coming later.
Yeah, in romance, right? Yeah. So Braveheart, yeah, and I had Pulp Fiction. Forrest Gump, I was looking at that one. Saving Private Ryan, Good Will Hunting. There's so many. It was just such a hard one, but again,
Good Will Hunting, yeah.
I mean, Good Will Hunting is my favorite movie, probably next to Swingers, but it was hard for me to say it may not be the best movie, even though it's my favorite. So that's why I think Shawshank.
And then was Good Will Hunting screwed by Titanic? Is that who screwed them over for Best Picture?
Yeah.
And I mean, I
Different movie.
And that was the year. Was that LA Confidential also that year?
Yep. And I know, Titanic, it's not everybody's favorite, but it's a good movie, and it's James Cameron.
I don't know. I would say out of the 5 that were nominated that year, it was the 4th best, because I would also put As Good as It Gets ahead of it. And then it's better than Full Monty, but
yeah, there's when you talk about Titanic, though, you think about the popcorn, the popcorn appeal. That's what it comes down to with that for sure. And no, I'm not getting into this one yet. I'll talk about this one next, because it was a drama too, but we'll get into this one. So let's move to romance. So romance, not as many here for me. So Wes, let's go back down to you. So Wes, where are you at on romance?
Oh man, this was a romance. I picked Buffalo 66.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Independent movie.
You're really, yeah. I mean, so this is where that independent comes
deep.
in.
Yeah.
Great movie though.
Yeah. I mean, you want to go with Jerry Maguire in a sense, but because I just like the movie.
I don't want to go with Jerry Maguire.
but as far as like a movie, that's it's basically about a guy who just is down on his luck, meets this girl, and she really likes him, and he doesn't understand why.
Right.
It's like, why do you like me? I'm just, and he's always, he's just completely down on himself. But Vincent Gallo, it's I guess it's more of my favorite movies, just because he did everything himself.
Right.
He starred, directed, produced it with a really small budget. And the theme behind it too is like, Buffalo, Buffalo lose. Oh, it's a loser city, it's like
Right. It's
lost 4 Super Bowls in a row.
it's well written is the thing, and I think that's more important than when you talk about, big budgets and things like that, and that's really what makes a great movie. So I mean, I can't be mad at that. I mean, that's good. I love it. Derek, what do you got?
It's not much. This one, I think Steve's right on. Not much of a surprise here. Tony Scott directed classic. Tarantino wrote this so he could fund Reservoir Dogs. It's got romance in the title. It's True Romance.
I knew it. I didn't want to spoil it, before, but I knew that was coming. That was, for me, that was a guarantee. And so, a lot of people haven't seen this. I was actually talking to Holly about that, and I was like, "Hey, Derek's gonna pick this one." She's like, "I've never heard of that."
If you want to talk about the most star-studded movie of all time,
yeah,
it is True Romance. If you look up the credits of True Romance, your jaw will drop how many people are in this movie. And this is the precursor really to Reservoir Dogs and to Pulp Fiction and all Tarantino's classic dialogues. You had classic scene with Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper. You had James Gandolfini talk, you had Gary Oldman as a white pimp. It was, and starring Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette. It is probably one of the closest to a perfect movie for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the movie. To be honest with you, it's definitely one of my favorites. And you're right. Like when you think about like how many people are in that movie, it's just crazy. Like when you think about how many people haven't seen it,
yeah, I know.
That's what's crazy to me. It's I mean, if you're a movie fan, you should be watching True Romance.
So if you're listening or watching this podcast, need to check out True Romance.
Yep. And then put in the comments, tell us what you thought of it, because I want to hear it.
And then when you realize how great a movie it is,
then you can
hit Derek. That subscribe button.
You can say, "Thank you, Derek, show me a great movie." So this is a tough one for me, because I think there are some good romances in the 90s, but I had this in drama too. IMDb has it both there, but so I went with Life is Beautiful, just because it's one of the most amazing stories that you'll ever see in any movie. Because I mean, it gets you right. It's obviously there's a lot of drama in it, but there's some romance in it, because this is 2 people or 3 people, but there's no big stars in it. It's not a blockbuster film, but it really is just it's heartfelt, it's heartbreaking, it's you're gonna cry, you're gonna smile, I mean, you're gonna do everything in this movie. Like, you're gonna be bipolar watching this movie. And it really, to me, is one of the best movies I've ever seen. So, and a lot of people have not seen it. If you have not seen it, same thing. Life is Beautiful. You got to see it. I won't spoil it all for you, but anytime you're talking about like that time of the world and Germany and concentration camps and things like that, it's always heart-wrenching. But this actually, for me, puts a spin on it that, yeah, it's tough, but at the same time, like, you see the resolve of people and the love of people, and I think it's a great movie. So for me, I had to put that in there, like, because there's some other good movies, and I know Derek, you're not the biggest fan of Titanic, but I think Titanic's one of the 90s, big ones. And if I don't say Pretty Woman, Holly will get mad at me because Holly, Pretty Woman is obviously one of those great 90s romances. And I think Julia Roberts had like a million of them in the 90s. So romance was good in the 90s. So let's move to sci-fi. So I'll start with sci-fi just because it's nothing that nobody would know or guess. I mean, everybody's going to know what I'm going to say, and it's The Matrix. And if I have to explain why it's The Matrix, then you haven't seen The Matrix. Just because to me it's the ultimate sci-fi movie, right? It's like what could be, and I think Keanu does one of the better jobs that he does, but there's also great supporting cast. Storyline's great. There's action. There's plot in it. There's everything in it. And I just don't see how in the 90s I couldn't call it the best sci-fi movie. And so, if you haven't seen The Matrix, then I think you're living under a rock. But if you haven't seen it, see it. So I'm going Matrix for I think everybody knows why. And so, Wes, what do you got?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was mine too. And there's not even really a close second for me in the 90s. What, Star Trek 6? I mean, it's like Star Trek.
There's a few, but I mean, yeah, you're right.
I mean, there's the Armageddons and movies like that, Independence Day. But The Matrix is so much. Another movie that should have been nominated. That was I think American Beauty won.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. But another movie that in the 90s, just like Heat, that didn't get nominated. It should. It stands the test of time. It will always, just because of the concept. So
yeah, I think it's that for me, one of the things about the concept is like the reality of the concept. If that was true, and everything that's happening, and you're like, God, I feel like I'm in the Matrix. I think that becomes one of these common feelings. So it's not just a movie in that sense. It's like the way we wake up in the morning. So but yeah, I mean, I think I agree there. So Derek, what do you got?
I like The Matrix, but it is definitely not the best 90s sci-fi movie. This movie is a generational movie. It is one of the highest grossing movies of all time. Its CGI and animatronics were revolutionary. We're going Jurassic Park.
Yeah. So Jurassic Park was actually in both my sci-fi and my action because it listed as both. Yeah, so I mean, make your case for Jurassic Park, but I think we all love Jurassic Park.
Well, who doesn't love dinosaurs, first of all? And just the fact of like how realistic they looked.
Yeah.
And it still holds today. I mean, there's another movie coming out really soon and everyone's freaking out about it because it's Jurassic Park. Yeah. Now, nothing compares to the first one. And
Chris Pratt's was pretty good.
Yeah, but nothing compares to the first one. Right. I mean, Richard Attenborough, Jeff Goldblum. I mean, now they have to bring the originals back for this one. But just like the sheer, like just the amount of like just seeing a T-Rex and then having the footprint and all of that. The special effects in that movie were so amazing back then, and they still hold today.
Yeah, and the whole storyline's great. I mean, obviously, what's going to happen when you open a park for dinosaurs? I mean, so I love it, and you can't knock Jurassic Park.
And then John Williams' score is amazing too.
Yeah, yep, yeah. And I love if they just got rid of the little blonde girl, like I'd have been happy.
And did you know she went to Western Oregon?
Yeah. Didn't know that. But she shouldn't have been in that movie.
Hey, she was in
did-
another great sci-fi movie. You know what movie that
she did
was?
fine. No.
Tremors.
Tremors. Oh man, love Tremors.
Oh yeah.
So it was hard for me not to because Matrix is so good. But I'll tell you, for those of you who haven't seen Strange Days, this is such a good movie and so underrated, and most people haven't seen it. So I want to throw Strange Days in there just because I really wanted to just pick Strange Days, but I couldn't not pick The Matrix. But it's so good. So if you haven't seen Strange Days, check it out. It's so ahead of its time. Like you're gonna watch that movie, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is the world. So if you haven't seen Strange Days, check it out. So last but not least, our horror / thriller category. This is an easy one for me. It's the only one that was easy for me. But let's start with Derek.
This is pretty similar. There's only one movie I could think of, and that's one that spawned off other movies from it. I mean, like everyone tried to copy it, and that's Scream.
Oh, okay.
I mean, from Scream, you had the I Know What You Did Last Summers, you had, Killing Mrs. Tingle, you had all these other movies that came from Scream. And I mean, they still try to make movies like Scream right now in the horror genre. Is it the scariest movie? No, but it's I love the first Scream. I loved so much because of how it went away. It made fun of the older horror movies, but then also followed the older horror movies.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Scream's great. Love Scream. Definitely when you're talking about a sheer horror film, it's really far up there in the 90s. What do you think, Wes? What do you got?
This was kind of tough for me just because it's
almost two categories in one.
Yeah, it's as far as what would the best be, I had to go with Silence of the Lambs.
Oh yeah, so that was the battle of my two. So I had two that I was battling between, and that was one of them. So tell us why.
It's Anthony Hopkins.
Right.
Just the sometimes it's better when you're dealing with horror thrillers. It's the psychological effects of not knowing and not seeing actual acts of horror. It's
right.
Just the whole mind games that he plays, and the culminations up to the end of the movie. Another movie, like if you haven't seen Silence of the Lambs,
right, you're under a rock.
You want to see fear, then yeah.
Well, I think when you talk about psychological thriller, I don't think you get better than Silence of the Lambs. If you get that specific on the category, but yeah, so Silence of the Lambs, man, I was back and forth, and I was back and forth. But ultimately I ended on 7. And so, I mean, come on. I mean, I just love 7. And I think, if you've seen it, then you understand why. For the people who haven't seen it, they could, say, oh, well, Silence of the Lambs was great. Or, another one I thought was really good for the 90s was Sixth Sense. People really like the Sixth Sense and things like that. But I think the way 7 plays out the plot and the storyline, and you include acting into that at the same time, I think you make a really good movie, and one that I can watch over and over and over and over again. I don't get tired of it, and so I went with 7, but it was a real close with Silence of the Lambs for this category for me. So I'll just break off my top, and then we'll go around the horn. So action T2, comedy Swingers, drama Shawshank Redemption, romance Life is Beautiful, sci-fi The Matrix, and horror thriller Seven. So Derek, give us your list.
Action T2, comedy There's Something About Mary, drama Heat, romance True Romance, sci-fi Jurassic Park, and horror Scream.
Wes, what's yours?
Pull up here. Action. Oh, we'll do mine later.
Point Break.
I don't have it written down.
You had Point Break for action.
Point Break.
You had Swingers for comedy. You had, what do you have for drama? All right, I don't remember Wes's.
Well, romance was Buffalo 66.
Yeah,
Sci-fi.
Horror was Silence of the Lambs.
Drama, wasn't it?
Drama was
American History X.
American History X. That's right. Okay, so that's all of our movies for you guys to check out in the 90s. Check them out. Tell us what you like, what you didn't like. Leave in the comments here. And so, as a little bit of a transition here, for you sports fans that are still listening, we're going to talk a little bit about the first day of the NFL draft, round 1. Man, I mean, I can't get enough NFL. Never, obviously I love football, but when you get into this draft, like, this is such a weird draft. So let's kind of start with, what do you think of the draft so far? Like, who has the best draft up to this point? First round, who had the best first round picks? And then are the picks going as you thought, or, is there any surprises? So let's start with Derek. What do you got?
Well, I think there's a few teams, but I'm going to go with the Jets, made the biggest. I think they got 3 top 15 players. They need a lot of stuff. I mean, they got, didn't they get Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and Jeremiah Johnson? Is it?
Garrett Wilson, Ahmad Gardner,
Jeremiah Johnson,
yeah, Jeremiah Johnson.
Jermaine
Johnson. So they got their pass rusher, they got a shutdown corner, and they got a receiver for Wilson. So that's what they need, because the last few years they've been getting offensive linemen. So this is Wilson's year. He's got to show it now.
Yeah. And so, not talking about the draft for a second, let's talk about Wilson. Like, is he the guy for the Jets?
Well, he actually started to play a lot better at the end of the season, so I would give him the benefit of doubt. They didn't have much talent around him, and that's always the hard part. I mean, I think Braxton Berrios was his best receiver. Yeah. So, and can you even name the running back?
No, I don't know. I mean,
no.
You look at the running backs they've had over the last few years, like right. Gore and what's his name, the old Pittsburgh Steeler for a while, Le'Veon Bell. I mean, yeah, they weren't doing a lot, and I think you're right. I think the Jets had a great first round for sure, right? But they had 3 picks, so
yeah. They traded in for the last pick, though,
right? So yeah, and then as far as like, say, top 5, top 10, is that pretty much what you expected?
I was surprised that teams were disciplined. I really thought we were going to see like a Christian Ponder type thing going on, but no one reached for any quarterbacks. This was pretty amazing. Usually, no matter what the draft class is, you got 3 or 4 quarterbacks going, and the only team, the Steelers, the only one that took a quarterback, and I still thought they took the wrong one, but they got value by where they picked him.
You don't like Pickett, huh?
I like Malik Willis better.
Malik Willis.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's upsides to that, but I think Pickett is the safer pick. Because I don't know that he'll be an elite quarterback, but I don't think he'll be a bad quarterback. I think he'll do well. I think put the right people around him and run the right type of offense. I think he's okay. He's got a good, strong arm.
Is he that much better than Mason Rudolph or Trubisky?
That's exactly what to me. He's another Mason Rudolph,
right?
In a sense, yeah. Mason Rudolph had a lot of physicals. He had skills, but he wasn't mobile. Yeah, he was kind of just never really developed.
Pickett's sneaky mobile though.
Yeah, Pickett is sneaky mobile, like his fake slide.
The fake slide was pretty cool.
He's sneaky mobile, and I think he has a stronger arm than most people realize.
He has small hands.
Yes.
Small hands, but something with his thumb where it comes around the ball. Like they're trying to explain it. And he actually sent the video to different teams. Like, hey, look, my hands are small, but my thumb wraps around the ball like this, so I can get a better grip on it. So
tell me this, Wes. I have a question for you. Thibodeau or Hutchinson? Who's a better edge pick there in that top 5?
I want to say Thibodeau just because of the upside, but he seems like his motor doesn't run like Aiden and Hutchinson does. Aiden is just a much more disciplined end. He's a lot more moves. I would lean toward Hutchinson just because you know what you're getting with him. He's going to give you 110%, pretty much 100% of the time. Versus Thibodeau, he's got, he's extremely fast around the edge. Sometimes I think possibly he gets distracted. Let's put it that way.
But now, yeah. So athletically, though, I mean, who's better, Hutchinson or Thibodeau?
Thibodeau.
So, is there a bigger upside to that?
Oh yeah, there's a bigger upside. Again, there's so many things about, I mean, you can play him if you're playing 3-4, you can play him, linebacker, play him, just more of an edge rusher. But yeah, if I'm just going straight up, just the safer pick, I'd have to go with Hutchinson.
I think the real question here is, it's not Thibodeau or Hutchinson. Why would you take Trayvon Walker over those two guys? And that's the real issue. I think Walker is a huge reach, and it's not like he is heads and above shoulders better, like workout warrior better than the other two, and he had less production with an amazing defense around him. So if you're telling me you have 5 first-round picks, plus you got Nakobe Dean, and that's probably early second, and you get barely any sacks or any tackles for loss. No, man, you got to have some production.
Yeah, 9 sacks.
I mean, I think that's definitely a bit of a stretch there, but I think that they're probably going for I think longevity or the ability that can come. I think they're just hoping.
That's the first pick overall. You don't want to be hoping for something though.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get it. It's hard to it's hard to justify, but at the same time, it's like you don't know when it comes to the NFL draft. It's like, who knows, what's going to happen.
Usually whenever someone is on a board and then all of a sudden they go from like 15th to number 1, they turn out to be a bust.
Right. And that I think that's probably the important part is got to understand that, people have already done their research, and so when you see that, it's hard to it is hard to justify. I agree. I mean, I can't really argue that. So Hutchinson here's for me, and I just because I think this the Thibodeau Hutchinson thing for me, I feel like Hutchinson's more like the Bosa's, right? I think you kind of know what you get out of the Bosa's, and I feel like Thibodeau's more like a Clowney, a Jadeveon Clowney, where he can be this freak athlete that if he really puts his heart into it, can dominate the game.
Well, and I feel the misnomer on Hutchinson is, I think, and I don't want to sound racist, but because he's white, people don't realize he has very comparable immeasurables to Von Miller. Right. When Von Miller was coming out of college. So it's not like he's a slow plotted, working really hard to get through. He's very gifted athlete also.
Yeah. And that's why I think he's a lot like the Bosa's, right? They're very gifted. I think that's the most comparison, the easiest comparison you could make. And so I thought that one was interesting when I look at those. And I think that's the way most people thought it was going to go. I think everybody thinks Aiden's a little more disciplined and was going to go higher. But I still think the Giants did really well for themselves. So the Giants, getting the fifth, you having the fifth and the seventh, getting Evan Neal and Thibodeau. You're getting the best lineman in the draft. And potentially, a superstar edge rusher. And so I think the Giants did really good for themselves. So as well as I think the Jets did, I think, looking at what the Giants did, I think they did really well for themselves.
And the one that surprises me, and it doesn't surprise me because it always seems to happen, even though they gave up Hollywood Brown, the Ravens got two quality players. They got the who was arguably the number one prospect in Kyle Hamilton.
Right.
And then they got the number one center in Tyler Linderbaum. So they did so well for picking late, like middle round.
Yeah, I think you got to look at the Ravens did great too. So I think Ravens, Jets, Giants, I think all did great in the first round. Any surprises? Anything, Wes, that threw you off or thought did great?
I think two surprises. The Saints traded up for Chris Olave.
Right.
That was kind of a head scratcher. I thought I like Chris Olave, I like Garrett Wilson better, but and then the trade, and actually the Packers not even taking a receiver again.
Does that surprise you? Not only does it not take a receiver, but you think two defensive players.
You think eventually, they might do it. They might pull the trigger on it. But
no,
I understand there are 5 receivers that went pretty much ahead of them. All 5 of them they wanted, and they didn't want the kid from North Dakota State.
Right.
And so it's like,
so now they're gonna wait. They're gonna wait until later to get a right receiver. So two things. The Packers just don't take offense. So that's just crazy. I do really, really like Quay Walker. That's a great pick. That guy's going to be good.
Really? I thought he was more of a second round talent, though. I thought you could get him in the second round.
You might have been able to. I don't think they wanted to take the chance.
I would have rather had Devin Lloyd.
Yeah.
Devin Lloyd's
and again, you don't know just because it's obviously NFL draft, so you don't know who's going to be good and bad. I'm sure they saw something in him, and just to be honest with you, I saw something in him watching him play. The speed he plays with.
Well, it's easy when you have Devontae Wyatt. You have those 2 defensive tackles to take all the blocks.
Yeah, and so but defensively, they've done some good things in Green Bay on defense. So they've been better on defense than they had in a while. So we'll see what happens. But I think that's a good pick. So with Olave though, there is one thing you can look at and say he is that kind of fire and ice, right? To Michael Thomas, where you've got the great possession receiver. Now you do put a speed threat to help Michael Thomas a little bit, to where Olave can stretch the field. So that almost could make a little bit of sense. Because I mean, you think about it, he is like one of the fastest guys in the draft, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's but trading up, I mean,
it's the whole idea of trading up. You're just like, oh, are they really going to go after Willis? Like,
so here's a question for you guys. Who do you think is the best wide receiver in the draft, or of the first round wide receivers, who's the best?
It was the other team I thought did really well, and that's the Detroit Lions with Aiden Hutchinson and Jamison Williams. Jamison Williams is hands down the best receiver in this draft class.
So,
if he didn't get hurt, Alabama's national champion.
Okay. What do you think, Wes?
Yeah, I have to go with Derek on that one. I mean, I like Garrett Wilson as far as like, the athletic ability, the ability to go up for, 50-50 ball. I think he's going to fit really well in New York. But yeah, Jamison Williams is, I mean, they clocked him at 23 miles per hour. Like he's another Tyreek Hill.
But he's big.
And he's big. Yeah.
That's the difference. Like,
it's
6'2".
His catch radius, that's great pickup for Detroit. It's going to really help Jared Goff, man. I think Jared Goff needs a lot of help, and we're going to see, how, Jared Goff can, lead this team to the playoffs, and they're still like the only team that's never been to a Super Bowl.
For a team that lost as much as they did, like they didn't play terrible.
No.
There was a lot of close games, and it's not all Goff's fault either. But yeah, I agree. I mean, James Williams definitely the best receiver. I do like Trey Burks a lot, though. I think he's big. He's got decent separation for his size. So I think that was a good pick.
Would you rather pay AJ Brown or draft Burks?
I'd let him go. I'm not an AJ Brown fan. AJ Brown does some good stuff. He catches the ball well sometimes. Like, so he's so hit or miss to me. It's like sometimes he's like this most amazing receiver you've ever seen. And then sometimes it's like, where's AJ Brown? Or like, why did you not catch that ball?
Well, what do you think about him with the Eagles, though?
Again, I think you're going to get what you get with AJ Brown. Is I just don't think he's consistent enough. So we'll see. I mean, maybe it's maybe he's not happy in Tennessee. Who knows? What the reasoning behind it is. But in my opinion, I just don't think he's very consistent.
Well, it's like a Julio Jones thing too. It's just I mean,
is it he's not consistent, or is it because Ryan Tannehill's the quarterback?
Well, there's a lot of issues in Tennessee. It's and one of them's not Derrick Henry.
And that's the whole thing.
Yeah. So overall, I think. As I looked at the draft and watched it go, I wasn't surprised with a lot of stuff. Like some people switched around a little bit. I think this was one of the drafts for me where most of the teams were really kind of fulfilled their needs. They didn't take many chances. Like there's a couple in there, that you want to question, especially the first overall pick, but I think, Olave was a little bit of a question for me, but when you look at like most teams kind of filled their needs, did a good job. A lot of O linemen taken. Thought that was interesting. no quarterbacks, just the one.
Right. No running backs.
Yeah, no running backs, 0 running backs, which is interesting. So exciting first round, but I'm actually more excited for the next couple rounds, because I think there's some good talent still out there.
And for me, being a Raiders fan, I think the trade is a steal now.
Right.
For me, like at 22, they weren't going to get any receivers.
No, I mean, you actually, you won there. Like the Raiders really won that trade.
And then Dolphins getting Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. And so I'm actually excited now that, that the Bears have a couple second round picks, because I think there's some good talent left in there. So I'm excited to see the next couple rounds of the draft. So we'll recap that, at our later podcast here. So, man, great podcast, guys. I love the movie stuff. I mean, those 90s movies. For those of you watching, love to hear some comments. What do we miss? What do you like?
Yeah, give us some suggestions. Maybe it's something we haven't seen. Doubt it, but maybe it's something we haven't seen.
Derek's seen everything.
Yeah. And I also suggestions, on new topics, new podcasts, open to all that in the comments. If you can't get on YouTube or you don't want to get on YouTube, check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever platform you use there. But don't forget to like and subscribe, at least on YouTube, so we can keep growing the channel. We're getting more views, more subscribers. Well, not as many subscribers. So you guys are watching, but you're not subscribing. So please subscribe. But more views,
And
which is great.
give us some comments too.
Yeah. And don't forget to like and subscribe. So appreciate everybody watching. We'll see you on the next podcast. Thanks.